All right, Frank, we're back with number 45 on your list. It's the Scorseseest movie that Scorsese never Scorsese'd. It's A Bronx Tale. A Bronx Tale is a 1993 crime drama directed by Robert De Niro and starring Robert De Niro, Chazz Palminteri, Lillo Brancato, Francis Capra, Kathrine Narducci, Taral Hicks, and a huge cast of other characters. I'm not going to go into everybody. If you want to learn more about A Bronx Tale and who was in it, feel free to go to IMDb and check them out. A Bronx Tale is the classic story of a young boy who's growing up in the 1960s in New York and is drawn into the dark side of gangsters and crime and the mob when he idolizes Sonny, who is a gangster who controls the area of town that he lives in. He becomes fascinated with Sonny as like a young child, and then as he grows up, he sort of grows into, helping Sonny out and starts leaning towards joining that mob. Robert De Niro plays the father, who is obviously worried about where his son's life is going and who is always at odds with Sonny because he knows who Sonny is, he knows what Sonny is doing, and he just wants his kid to grow up and be a good person and not a criminal. Your thoughts on A Bronx Tale are? I grew up with this. The soundtrack is amazing. I would 100% agree. The soundtrack is absolutely amazing. Everything about this film is really, really good. De Niro definitely came out really strong with this directorial debut, and you can see all of the things that he sort of like put in the back of his mind while he was working with Scorsese, and him using those things to create this film. At first, it kind of threw me off a little bit because I was watching this and I was like, man, this is really just a Scorsese movie, like hardcore. Like even from like the very opening scene, you got Lillo Brancato's voiceover, just like you have Ray Liotta's voiceover throughout Goodfellas. The time period that the film is set in, the fact that it's set in New York City, the themes that it tackles, racism, gangsters, life in the big city, whether it's better to be a criminal or a legitimate business person, is money or morals more important? Like, all of that is so Scorsese, and it definitely shines through in this. But there's a huge difference between somebody who watches somebody else making a film and says, I understand why that person is doing what they're doing, and I understand why it makes them successful, and then that person takes those tools and makes something of their own. There's a huge difference between that and somebody who's like, oh, I like Goodfellas, I'm just going to make another Goodfellas. Because there's a lot of Goodfellas copies out there. There's a lot of Scorsese copies out there. But A Bronx Tale, it feels like a really well done homage to those films. I don't know that much about De Niro's past. I do know that his dad was a painter, I believe, or a sculptor or some kind of fine artist. So I don't think that this is a purely personal story. There might have been some personal elements in it, but De Niro's character in this is a really like just a regular old bus driver, like really working class. So I don't think it's like in any way his personal story, but I think that De Niro probably came across some of these guys, like the guy that Chazz Palminteri plays, and maybe even as a kid had, some of those thoughts of like looking up to this person. So as I was going through this again, I was looking at A Bronx Tale real quick, and I didn't realize it, but Chazz Palminteri, who plays Sonny, actually wrote this as a play and then wrote the screenplay as well. So, you know, I was sitting there talking about De Niro, like maybe there were some personal things in it with De Niro, but apparently maybe it was Chazz Palminteri who had some personal connection to that because he wrote it. So, just want to get that straight. Leo Brancato is probably, or was probably, the best person that you could cast as Robert De Niro's son. You have the two, there's like scenes where the two of them are like sitting together or standing together or whatever. The two of them are together in the frame is the point. And legit, like they look like they're their father and son. I mean, that is the best piece of casting you can do, is when you find someone who looks so similar to you that the audience is like, that is father and son. I love Francis Capra, who plays the young version of C. The scenes with him and De Niro are like fantastic. I mean, they just play off of each other so well in that film. And you know, there's a scene where they're having dinner and the dialogue is just going like that, you know, and it just, I love it. It's fantastic.
Your mother told me she caught you by the bar today.
I was by the bar.
Tell your father the truth.
I was by the bar.
So then why'd you lie?
I took a shot.
Want to do something here?
What am I gonna say? Took a shot. Nice try, son.
Thanks, Dad.
Lorenzo.
The film is really unvarnished in the way that it portrays the really tight-knit communities back in that time. I don't know that New York City is as much like that now, but obviously back in that time, 50s, 60s era, you know, you had your neighborhood and you stuck to your neighborhood. And as hard as it is to watch at sometimes, you know, these people were like very stringent about that. And, you know, when you have anybody who's an outsider, you know, they attack them. And while that is sort of, at this point, sort of a cliche, you know, oh, the black people are coming into the Italian neighborhood, or the Italian people are coming into the black neighborhood, or the Jewish people are coming into the Italian neighborhood, or whatever. You know, there's been a lot of films where those scenes have happened, or that's the whole focus of the film, you know, is these neighborhoods in New York and people, you know, being where they shouldn't be or whatever. It could so easily end up in a cliche, but somehow De Niro weaves the tale so well that it never does. It never feels like something that is less impactful than he wants it to be. And that kind of surprised me a little bit, I think, because again, like, I've seen this story, you know, I've seen the story of like the little kid who wants to be a gangster. I've seen the story about the New York neighborhoods where it's like people shouldn't be where they're not supposed to be. I've seen all that stuff. We've seen everything that's in this film. We've seen it before, you know, but he does such an expert job at crafting this film that you're in it from the first second until the last. So Bronx Tale, I would say, is definitely one of the better films on this list, and I really enjoyed it. Okay, next up on your list is number 46. It's The Island. I'm gonna be honest with you. At the shooting of this video, I have watched The Island. I'm just gonna leave it at that. So, until next time, like, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. Do all the things. Until next time, from quarantine, signing off. That's so dumb. Anyway, have a good week.